Welcome back, guys. I am here to talk about what a lot of folks have asked. Finally doing the video on some of the options that you guys have in the tanker division. Delivering at one of the facilities that I come to very, very frequently. I've been here probably 5 times in the last week. And that's one of the things in the dedicated account that is kind of unique. You'll come to some of the same places very, very often. So dedicated is an option. Obviously, over the road is an option at Tanker, and I'm going to get a little bit into each of those shortly. Prime also has a regional account. There is one regional account available in Tanker, and that is in the Northeast. They load majority of the time out of Newark, New Jersey, at a plant there called AAK, which is in Port Newark, very close to the Newark airport. But that's not the only place that they load, and that's what makes it a regional instead of a dedicated. If you don't know the difference between dedicated, regional, and over the road, let's start there. Dedicated is what I do. And dedicated means that I am dedicated to, in my case, I'm actually dedicated to 2 loading operations. There is a plant, there's a company, and all that I do is I load out of one of 2 locations. One is in Decatur, Indiana, the other is in Bellevue, Ohio. Because I live near Decatur, Indiana, I load almost exclusively, and I'm not going to say exclusively, but almost exclusively out of Decatur, probably 90+% of the time. If I'm needed, if there are more loads in Bellevue, Ohio, I'll get sent over there. But my truck, because I work for this dedicated account, everything that I do, there are some rare occasions we'll need some trucks. We're short of guys for over-the-road stuff. If I get sent, just as an example, a couple of weeks ago I got sent to Rochester, New York, which is about as far away as we go on this dedicated account, to get me back rather than deadheading. And if you don't know what deadheading is, once you deliver, you're empty. You deadhead to your next pickup location. From Rochester, New York, it's a significant amount of miles to come back empty, and as a lease operator, you're not getting paid. And we'll go into I'm going to do a separate video. I've thought about doing all the options and then talking about lease versus company, but I think that's too much information to go into in one video. But you don't get paid as a lease operator for deadhead miles. So rather than have me come all the way back from Rochester, Bellevue would be the closest, they send you to, say, Newark, New Jersey, where you can pick up a load and get paid to come back for part of that, where it's slightly shorter to go to Newark. So you kind of become an over-the-road driver a little bit. That doesn't happen very often. When I did that a couple of weeks ago, that was the first time I had done it in about 6 months. And I think before that, I'd done it a handful of times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And it all depends on need. But basically, for dedicated, which is what I know the most about, and if you want to ask questions, again, ask in the comment section. I know the most about dedicated because that's what I do. I do know a little bit about over the road. I did that during my training. I did that as well, like I said, when I get sent out east. Over the road with Prime and Tanker, one of the biggest questions is, what areas do you run? And the usual comment that you get is 90% east of the Mississippi River. And that is primarily true, but that ignores that we do also go to Kansas, we do also go to Texas, we do go to California. We go outside of those lanes, but I think the easier thing to say is there are 3 primary locations that Prime loads and branches out from. I mentioned Newark, and we have a regional based out of Newark, and I'm going to get back to regional momentarily. But Newark is one of our major hubs. Savannah, Georgia is a major hub loading. And when I say hub, I mean we get a lot of loads out of these areas. And then a town called Shanahan, Illinois, which is just south of Chicago, near Joliet, is a major hub loading location. If you draw a triangle between those three locations, that's where you're going to spend a majority of your time. Like I said, you're going to occasionally go to Texas, you're going to occasionally go to California, you're going to occasionally go, I know that there's one place that we load in Washington State, but if you want to come to Tanker and want to see the West, Tanker is not the place to do it. So just keep that in mind. You're going to spend a lot of time in that triangle. If you load in Newark, New Jersey, you could go up to the Northeast and go to Massachusetts or up to Vermont or whatnot. Could load in Savannah. You could get a load down to Florida. We don't go to Florida very often, but there are a handful. Out of Chicago, you could go down to Texas. You could go up to Wisconsin and whatnot. But like I said, for the most part, you're going to run in that triangle and then deliver here, there, out of that area. So that's over the road. Mentioned dedicated. Now the regional, like I said, you primarily load out of the Newark area. It's not dedicated similar to what I do, where I load out of one of two locations. You'll spend a lot of time loading out of Port Newark and that AAK that I talked about, but you'll also load out of some other locations, and then primarily spend your time in the Northeast, probably as far south as Virginia, maybe over into Pennsylvania, and that's about as far west as you'll go. If you live in the New York area, I would think it would be pretty easy to get home. I do know one driver who lives in North Carolina, I believe, who works that regional account, and he seems to like it quite a bit. I don't think you can get home quite as often as I do. Obviously, I go home every night. That's because I live 15 minutes from the Decatur terminal. But those are the options. Kind of a little bit about where we go, where we deliver to. Like I said, I've done a little bit of the over the road. I did about 4 months over the road, strictly over the road when I did my training. I now have been dedicated for about 9 months out of Decatur, primarily Decatur again. I have loaded out of our Bellevue facility many, many times. I don't have the experience with the regional account, but those are the options that Prime offers. If you have questions, I'll look into them. Like I said, I do know a driver who runs the Northeast regional account. I know several drivers who are over the road, and obviously I'm a dedicated driver, so I can get you some answers if you would like them. Please comment on the video. I'll see what I can do for you. Hope you continue to enjoy these. Not been doing as much overnight driving this week, so that's good news. Hopefully that will continue, and I'll get back to posting videos Friday night and or Saturday morning. So hope you're enjoying. Thanks for watching. Share them, and we'll talk to you next week.